Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm gonna be talking about Ling, one of the hardest and strongest assassin in the game. In this video, I will also talk about how Ling works in full details, which includes his passive, skills, builds, emblems, combos, along with some tips and guide on how to use him in a match. So let's get started with the video. Ling has remained as one of the best assassins in the game, and what separates him from other assassins is his ability to climb and jump between walls, allowing him to easily take down the backline of the enemies. But mastering him is very difficult, especially if you have never used him before. So in order to master Ling, you must first understand how his skills and passive works. I will first explain about his second skill, and after that, I will then explain his first skill and passive together, so that it won't be confusing for you guys. So let's start with his second skill. With the help of his second skill, Ling charges at a target direction and strikes the nearby enemies, dealing 300 physical damage. This skill is your main source of mobility and damage, so make sure to max out this skill first. And this skill has a really long range, allowing you to hit the enemies without having to get close to them, so make sure to take that to your advantage. And since this skill is considered as a basic attack, it can trigger the attack effects of items like Berserker Fury and Endless Battle. Now, let's talk about his first skill and passive. With the help of his first skill, you can leap onto any wall using your first skill. And when you are standing on the wall, the range of your basic attack will be greatly increased. And your second skill will also get changed when you are standing on a wall. And if the enemies use stun abilities on you while you are on the wall, you will be slowed by 30% and fall down from the wall. And if you go near a bush while you are standing on the wall, the enemies won't be able to see you. And if you recall to base while standing on the wall, the cooldown of your first skill will get reset, allowing you to directly use your first skill again. Now, let's talk about his passive, which is quite confusing when you first read it, so I will try my best to explain it in the easiest way possible. Just like Fanny, Hayabusa, and Nolan, Ling uses energy instead of mana. But unlike other heroes, the color of his energy is white, which can be seen below his health bar. And his energy is called lightness points. And when you stand on the walls, you will gain 4 lightness points per second. And dealing damage to an enemy with your basic attack will grant you 5 lightness points. So it pretty much means that you will gain energy if you stand still on the wall, and attacking an enemy will also restore your energy. So compared to other heroes, his energy is more manageable. But it's still recommended to take the blue buff for more energy, as you will need a ton of energy during team fights. Now, let's talk about the second ability of his passive. And if you read it, it says, Ling gains 1.6 times critical chances from all sources, but only has 150% critical damage. And that's pretty confusing to be honest, especially for the new players. So let me explain it in an easy way. In his passive, it says Ling gains 1.6 times critical damage from all sources, which basically means any item that provides critical chance will be 1.6 times more effective for Ling. For example, Claw provides 20% critical chance, meaning you will gain 20% critical chance after you buy Claw. But for Ling, instead of 20% critical chance, you will receive 32% critical chance, meaning Ling benefits the most, compared to other heroes when it comes to critical damage items. And that sounds pretty broken. But don't worry, let me explain. Even though Ling gains 1.6 times more critical chance from all sources, he only has 150% critical damage. Meaning, even though he has higher chances of triggering critical strikes, the damage he deals from critical strikes is fixed at 150%. Meaning the damage from his critical strike is lesser compared to other heroes, and his critical damage will always remain 150%. And that's honestly a good trade, because even though the damage you deal from the critical strike is less, you still have higher chances of triggering critical damage compared to other heroes. And to be honest, 90% of the time, his basic attack and skills usually trigger critical strike, so it's a fair trade in my opinion. Now, let's talk about his ultimate skill. With the help of his ultimate, Ling leaps into the air, becoming invincible and gaining 10% extra movement speed for 1.5 seconds. He then lands on the ground, dealing 250 physical damage to enemies in the area. And the enemies that are in the center of the ultimate will be knocked airborne for 1.5 seconds. And upon landing, there will be a sword on each side of the ultimate. And touching those swords will refresh the cooldown of your second skill, allowing you to dash again without having to wait for the cooldown. His ultimate is one of the hardest ultimates in the game, and players need to dash in a perfect square in order to collect all the swords. And mastering his ultimate is no easy task, as it requires a lot of practice and time. So, let's talk about the tips and combos about his ultimate. If you truly want to master Ling's ultimate, then you will need to play at least 3 matches with him every day, as using him a lot is the only way you will truly be able to master his ultimate. But here are 3 tips and guide on how to master his ultimate. So let's start with the first tip. Most of the times, especially when you are turret diving with Ling's ultimate, some of your swords will land inside the walls or turrets, making it almost impossible for you to collect the swords. And for that, you can actually rotate his ultimate. And you can rotate his ultimate by holding on his ultimate button, and rotating it around, allowing you to choose and know where the swords will land. And that way, you will have higher chances of collecting his swords in one swoop. And for the second tip, you can pre-select the location of your dash. And to do that, make sure to aim your second skill towards the direction you want to dash, all while your ultimate is still in animation. And once you've made up your mind on where you want to dash, you can release his second skill and immediately aim towards the next sword. And that way, you will immediately dash towards the first blade as soon as the animation of your ultimate is complete. But remember, you must aim and release his second skill, all while you are still in the air. So you will need a fast hand in order to achieve this. And for the third tip, you must never dash directly towards the swords. You must remember, the swords from his ultimate has a very big hitbox. So instead try to dash towards the sides of the sword, as dashing towards the side of the swords will increase the chances of being able to collect the next sword. Now, let me show you the combo you can do with Ling. Now, let's talk about his builds and emblems. For Ling, it's recommended to go for items that can increase your burst damage capabilities. And for that, this is the best build for him. But if you want a little sustainability, then you could buy Immortality instead of Blade of Despair. Now, let's talk about his emblems and talents. For his emblem, the Assassin emblem is the best emblem for Ling. And for his talents, these are the recommended talents for him. And for his core talent, go for Killing Spree, as Killing Spree will increase your chances of survival when killing an enemy. Now, let's talk about his gameplay and how to use him in a match. Something you must remember when using Ling is that, unlike other assassins, Ling cannot one-shot the enemies within seconds. And compared to other assassins, it usually takes a little longer for Ling to kill the enemies. And since Ling relies on his basic attacks and second skill to deal damage, your main priority during the early game should be farming and reaching level 4. And once you reach level 4, try to gank the gold lane, since the gold lane is the easiest to gank. And compared to other heroes, you will have higher chances of killing the enemy's marksman, so you must prioritize ganking the gold lane after reaching level 4. And after you reach level 4, you must try to secure the turtle, as killing the turtle will provide you and your whole team with extra gold and shield. And remember, Ling consumes a lot of energy, so you must prioritize taking the blue buff, as taking the blue buff will increase your energy, allowing you to use your skills more often. So, your early game priorities should be farming, taking the blue buff, reaching level 4, and securing the turtle. Now, let's talk about his mid-game. During the mid-game, you should have at least one or two of your core items. And this is the stage where Ling starts to shine the most, and you should easily be able to kill the enemy's mage and marksman without much problem. So your main priority during the mid-game should be targeting their mage and marksman, as they are the main damage dealers of the enemy's team. And killing them first will greatly increase the chances of winning the teamfight by a lot. And during this stage, you can also start to turret dive the enemies, but make sure to turret dive only when your ultimate is available, as you can use your ultimate to escape and also engage the enemies. And just like I've mentioned before, you must consistently take the blue buff whenever possible, because if you don't take the blue buff, you will have a hard time during a teamfight. And I'd recommend you to use your first skill only when necessary, as using his first skill consumes a lot of energy. And make sure to remember, Ling's main weakness is CC and stun abilities. So heroes like Kufra, Minsathar, Ruby, and Eudora can easily counter Ling. So make sure to be careful when playing against these heroes, as one stun from them could send you back to your base. Now, let's talk about his late game. During the late game, you must be very careful, especially if you're playing against enemies with stun abilities. Because during the late game, the enemies will save their CC and stun abilities, and wait for you to enter the fight. So make sure to always wait for the enemies to use up their skills before entering a fight. And I'd recommend you to let your tank or fighter engage the teamfight. And after your tank and fighter starts the teamfight, you can then enter the teamfight. And as always, your main priorities should be killing their mage and marksman. And remember, timing and positioning is the key to winning during the late game. So always wait for the perfect opening before entering a fight, as one wrong move could instantly lead to your defeat. And during the late game, you must also prioritize taking the Lord, as taking the Lord could greatly increase the chances of ending the game. So, what do you think about Ling? Make sure to let me know your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to leave a like on the video. And consider subscribing to my channel for more videos like this. Thank you for watching.